there is exactly 22 weeks and 5 days until Super Bowl 58. And not that I'm trying to rush the season, but I'm always excited to see who will play in the biggest game of the year. So, in today's video, I'm going to put together 10 Super Bowl matchups that I would love to see this year, even if it's not the most realistic. But if you like sports podcasts, I'm telling you, this is the channel for you. As quick shout out to you guys, we just surpassed 500 subs on the channel. I could not be more grateful for all the support you guys have had as of late, as we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers now, and we're already at 550. So if you enjoyed at any point, please support us down below. We've been dropping 4 videos a week for about a year now. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. It's Owen. Let's start off with an honorable mention. We're going to start here with the KC and Philly rematch from last year. As again, it's a rematch of last year's Super Bowl. It was one of the best Super Bowls, in my opinion, that we've ever seen. And it was also one of the best games of this era in general, as those two great teams, multiple great storylines. It was a high-scoring game all the way down to the end. It was everything that you could have asked for, maybe aside from a game-winning Hail Mary, but it was everything you could have asked for in that game. As the only knock on it, at least in my opinion, and probably with the general consensus, is that the game's most likely going to be remembered for a bad penalty call more so than the overall game and how good the actual game was. But that's usually how that stuff works. I would love to see this matchup again. No shocker here. Most people would say this is their favorite to, I guess, come out of the AFC and NFC yet again. However, it was too easy of a pick for me to just say that I wanted to see this again. I think everybody would like to see this again, maybe aside from Cowboy fans. I would like to see if you guys would drop some matchups down below in the comments as well, is what I'm getting at here, as I would love to see some matchups. You know, if you're a Colts fan, why not? Even if it's not the most realistic, drop an Anthony Richardson MVP level season in the comments where he leads the Colts to a Super Bowl and faces the Philadelphia Eagles. Drop some of those predictions down below, as either if you want to go the realistic route or if you want to go the fantasy route. Drop some Super Bowl matchups you would like to see down below. Again, whether if it's storyline based or realism based. But moving over here to our first matchup I would like to see, it is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles. I wanted to start off this list with a relatively vanilla answer, but still a matchup I would love to see. But of course, the quarterbacks of both of these teams, Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, the last time these guys met in a game at any level, it wasn't pretty. As in the 2018 or 19 Peach Bowl game, Joe Burrow and that amazing 2019 LSU team, they annihilated the Oklahoma Sooners, who were led by Jalen Hurts, 63-28. And I get it, LSU maybe that's the best team of all time in college football, but Joe Burrow still had like 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. That was the game we all knew Joe Burrow was going first overall. But we have yet to see both of these guys play at the highest level, which is the professional level in the NFL, and these are my top 2 Super Bowl favorites for this upcoming season. So both of these guys are completely different quarterbacks for one, but they are in obviously really good situations, really good teams. These are teams that if they met in the Super Bowl, they would light the house on fire, the arena, the stadium on fire, as it would be a game for the ages, in my opinion. But though Philly might have the edge defensively in this game, Cincy would definitely have the edge offensively in this game. So maybe you can have the storyline of, well, 1, Jalen Hurts wants his rematch, but 2, maybe this is the best offense versus the best defense in the NFL. 2 very well-rounded teams at the end of the day, and after all, they were both a part of the 4 conference title teams from the last season. And these are also 2 teams that have lost the last 2 Super Bowls. So a lot of, I guess, sub-storylines that all tie into one here in this matchup. But at the end of the day, they're my top 2 Super Bowl favorites, and I would love to see them go head-to-head in 2024. But moving over to number 2, a lot less realistic, right? But again, that's not the point of today's video. It's to get 10 matchups I would love to see, regardless of the realism factor. But it's the New York Giants versus the New York Jets. It is a self-explanatory battle for the Big Apple, battle for New York, battle for overall MetLife Stadium. Though this is very unlikely, I couldn't imagine how the media would be if a game like this took place at the Super Bowl level. These are 2 teams that have tons of questions, and most people in the media don't even have these teams as a top 2 team in their division. right? With the Giants, you have the Cowboys and Philly above them. With the Jets, you have the Bills and the Dolphins above them. A lot of people are doubting these teams heading into this year. But for Aaron Rodgers, for him to be able to go to a team like the Jets at this late in his career, take a team that's been missing the playoffs and been missing that quarterback to the highest level, to the Super Bowl in his first season, that would only add to his decorated career as a quarterback, and it would be huge for the city of New York. For the Giants, for Brian Daboll and Danny Dimes, they just paid their quarterback. They believe in Daniel Jones. Maybe, he plays better than last year. Maybe he plays up to this contract value. And for him to take this Giants team to the Super Bowl, I think it would definitely have to be as a 7th seed with their patented underdog playoff run style that the Giants love to do with Eli Manning. As remember, those 2 Super Bowls against the New England Patriots with Tom Brady, if I can remember. I don't know why I'm forgetting the most decorated franchise maybe in history. However, the Giants, they were underdogs both of those years. I mean, one year they were 6th seed, and the other year they were a 4th seed that barely won their division. This is a team that is known for the underdog playoff run, and this is a year I think they would have to do that yet again, to be a 6-7 seed in the playoffs, to make that underdog run, and to meet up with an AFC opponent in their own city in the New York Jets. I think it would be definitely an interesting matchup, a lot of storylines and a lot of media attention. And with it being two New York teams, this might be the most viewed Super Bowl of all time. But regardless, very interesting New York style matchup there. Sticking with the Jets in matchup 3, but we add the Green Bay Packers. When Brett Favre left Green Bay, the Packers struggled in the first season or two that Brett Favre left because Aaron Rodgers took over, and rightfully so. Aaron Rodgers wasn't he wasn't yet the Aaron Rodgers that we grew to know. As, in a matchup like this, can you imagine the storylines? If Jordan Love, the successor of Aaron Rodgers, the first-year starter, if he was able to come in as the starter of this team, and he was able to do not only what Rodgers couldn't do in his first year, but what Rodgers hasn't been able to do since 2011, and that's to get this franchise and this Packers team over the hump and to the Super Bowl for the first time in, 12 years at this point, that alone would be a storyline. Aaron Rodgers versus his old team in the Green Bay Packers, the team that he's going to have his jersey retired for. Aaron Rodgers versus Jordan Love, his successor. Those would be 2 of the biggest storylines. But I'm sure you would have the Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers storyline, the city of Green Bay versus Aaron Rodgers. There's a lot of storylines that could happen in a matchup like this. Now, if this was a matchup if this was the matchup at the end of the day, I would expect the Jets to come out and obliterate the Green Bay Packers. On a stage like this, given the talent on both teams, I would expect the Jets to run away with a game like this and really maybe even retire Aaron Rodgers after a Super Bowl win. Regardless, I think both of these teams, regardless of talent, would be super motivated to play it with all those storylines that I mentioned. The odds are definitely against this one from happening, but again, not the point of today's video. It is to see Super Bowl matchups that I would love to see that we might not necessarily get in the regular season. I would love to see a matchup like this. Big Jordan Love fan. Moving over to matchup number 4, and it is the Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions. We may be in danger of the world ending if this matchup ever took place. As a Browns fan, I can say that if we haven't had the worst experience as fans, it's definitely the fans of the Detroit Lions. We're definitely second in that category if that is the case. But the fans of these franchises have so much in common. They're loyal through thick and thin. They're passionate. They show up to every game, regardless of the record. And they both have been needing some meaningful success from their franchises. Now, is this likely? No. Again, I'm going to say it again. It's not the point of today's video. Both of these teams, for the first time, it seems like ever, have formidable playoff level teams. And, that it's the first time in at least in a long time that both of these guys have been relevant in the same year. And again, there's not a big connection between these two teams beyond the media, like the Rodgers and Green Bay matchup, or the Battle of New York, or the Peach Bowl game from 2018. There's not a big storyline connection between these two teams. However, this is a game for true football fans. Teams, for football fans that just want to watch two teams have some type of success at the highest level in which they've never had. These are two of the few teams that have never won a Super Bowl, let alone been to the Super Bowl. So a lot of history would be made with this matchup. So I guess the storylines would kind of write themselves. But again, with everything that's been said, if this was the matchup at the end of the day, as a Browns fan, you know I got to roll with my team. Give me Deshaun Watson to come back from his terrible time in Houston. I guess terrible ending in Houston, more so off the field than on the field. Regardless, give me the Browns and Deshaun Watson to make some history here in Cleveland. But, I guess Lions fan, if you're a Lions fan, I would definitely expect you to say that the Detroit can take this one. But moving over to matchup number 5, we have the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles. As some of you guys know, the quarterbacks on these teams both went to the University of Alabama, as Tua for the Dolphins and Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles. We know Jalen Hurts finished his college career in a different place, but we'll talk about that here in a second. In the 2017 BCS National Championship game, again, that was before the college football playoff. In the 2017 BCS National Championship game, Tua Tagovailoa replaced Jalen Hurts at halftime, with Alabama trailing Georgia 13-0. And Tua, he came in after halftime, and he rallied the Crimson Tide to a 26-23 overtime win, one of the best games I've ever seen. And Jalen Hurts was then named the number 2. He would later transfer to Oklahoma, and the rest is history, as we've seen how their professional careers have played out. And I misspoke there. The college football playoff was around since 2014. I don't know why I said that. Regardless, biggest game of the year, Tua replaced Jalen Hurts at halftime to do what he didn't, and that is to succeed on the field and to win at the highest level. This matchup would be highlighted by the fact that, one, these were former college teammates who they both went through a lot in their young careers. With Jalen Hurts, he had the questions around him if can he play at the highest level. Sometimes some of these analysts said he's not ready for the pros. And then he, of course, sat behind Carson Wentz for a couple years, I think a year and a half, and even when he stepped in, nobody believed in him until he led this team to the Super Bowl last year. For Tua, we know the injury concerns that he's had in his young career. I mean, he was risking his life. He's risking his life really getting back on the field this year. So he's going to show tons of heart doing that. But both of these guys have had a lot of questions in their young career, a lot of battles, a lot of things they've had to, go over. It's going to be definitely a bunch of storylines in this game, right? And I think obviously it's going to be highlighted by the fact they were teammates and Tua replaced them. So though we know the answer to this question, I think both of these guys are going to come into this matchup with a chip on their shoulder and trying to prove, really, who is the better quarterback. Again, we know Jalen Hurts has that advantage, but maybe Tua, if he leads them to the Super Bowl and he wins the Super Bowl, maybe he just is the bigger brother in this matchup. But regardless, this is a matchup that would have 2 top 5 level offenses, that 2 top 10 level defenses. It should be a high scoring game, but if not, both of these defenses would definitely put on a show. However, if this was the matchup in 2024, I would take Philly. I would bet Philly in this matchup. No shocker here. Regardless, with the offensive explosion of the Dolphins and of the Eagles, I would hope for a very high-scoring game. Regardless, moving over to number 7, we have the Chargers and the Dallas Cowboys. Aside from this matchup being the Kellen Moore game, there's no real connection in this matchup, as these are just 2 teams that for years they have had the talent, they've had the expectations, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. And these are teams that, yet again, have the talent and they are favorites to at least be competitive in their conferences. But both of these teams have questionable head coaches, with Mike McCarthy for the Cowboys, and I can't even think of the coach for the Chargers as of right now. I need to get back into football mode. But both of these teams would have a top 5 unit on different sides of the ball. Chargers offensively, Cowboys defensively. So it definitely would set up an interesting matchup between the Chargers offense, that now have Kellen Moore, the former offensive coordinator of the Cowboys, versus the Dallas defense. 2 teams, again, that have had the talent, have had the expectations, but haven't been able to get over the hump. And I think definitely Dallas, this would be a bigger game for them, returning to the Super Bowl for the first time since the 90s. And the Chargers returning for the first time since, when they got obliterated by the Niners. And they lost pretty badly there to Steve Young and Jerry Rice and them. I think that might be the first time they've been, or that was the last time they've been to the Super Bowl. Regardless, again, no real connection, but I guess the storyline would be the Kellen Moore game. I don't know. Regardless, very interesting matchup there. Moving over to Jacksonville and the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be the Doug Peterson game, and very simply put, but it's going to be at the Super Bowl level. So at the highest level, and these are teams that met last year in the regular season, in which Philly got the upper hand, and maybe that even gives Jacksonville a little bit more motivation heading into a game like this. But Trevor Lawrence, he should take another leap in his game. This Jacksonville team as a unit should take another overall step in their game up. And I think it would definitely set up a very interesting matchup there between Tua and Jalen Hurts, as they, of course, met in college football a couple times, if my memory serves me right. Regardless, at the pro level, they've met once. Jalen Hurts has the upper hand as far as record goes. Very good defense and overall team from Philly. I can say the same about Jacksonville. It would set up a very interesting game. And the last time Philly won a Super Bowl, it was with Doug Peterson. And if these two teams met at that highest level, definitely that would be the storyline driven to all of us fans. Regardless, two teams I think are Super Bowl contenders this year. I would love to see this matchup in 2024. And moving over to number 9, again, another Philly matchup. But this is just, this is where it came to, like, I want to have it somewhat realistic, but I want to have some fun with it. And Philly is just a team that I want to see play football because of how well-rounded they are. But in matchup number 9, as a Browns fan, it hurts to say, but it would bring a very interesting matchup, as it is the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles. These are two bird teams, with the Ravens and the Eagles, and both of these teams historically have loved the run game, and they have always had really good defenses. This year, it might be a little different for the Baltimore Ravens. Regardless, I think both of these teams' philosophies should be to run the ball a lot because they have the quarterback talent to do that. They have the overall offensive scheme to do that, and they also are going to play really good defense to win them their games. Now this year, I think, again, story remains the same. We get to see a Lamar Jackson versus Jalen Hurts matchup. I think the storyline will be driven behind Lamar because he hasn't got there yet. And now with Todd Monken there, this offense should be able to pass a lot more, and which should open up the run game. I think Baltimore this year definitely has the potential to get this far, and setting up a matchup between them and Philly would definitely be a Super Bowl I'd love to watch. As far as the colors, the schemes, and the storylines between both teams. And I'm not sure if Jalen Hurts and Lamar ever played at the collegiate level, but I definitely don't remember them playing at the professional level. I think Carson Wentz in his 1 year there played against Lamar and this young team. I don't think Jalen Hurts ever had a crack at it. So give me the Birds in the matchup number 9. And to finish off this list, at number 10, I have the Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers. This is the Mike McDaniel versus Kyle Shanahan game. And also, I mean, it's going to be the best offense in the Dolphins versus the best defense in the Niners. But this is a matchup, of course, if you don't know, Mike McDaniel was an assistant coach for the Niners and for Kyle Shanahan for some time there. And then he got an opportunity last year. Came over from San Fran. People didn't know anything about him. And he led a top offense last year with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle, with Tua, and that talented offensive side of the ball in Miami. I think going up with that offense against the San Fran defense would set up a very interesting matchup. Does offense win championships or does defense win championships? But having a mentor versus a mentee in the coaching side of things would definitely set up another storyline. And, hey, just Tua versus Brock Purdy is another thing. Both of these guys are very hated, or not hated, but I guess underrated is a way to put it. And that would set up another storyline there, as I think definitely San Fran would get the edge in this matchup if that was the case. But who knows? Tyreek Hill is 1 touch away or 2 touches away from winning a game single-handedly. You could say the same thing about Jalen Waddle. So I don't want to count Miami out in these Super Bowl matchups, but it's definitely more likely that San Fran would get the edge in a game like this. And guys like Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, guys like Kyle Juszczyk, and, of course, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, all of these guys would be able to get their first rings, and that would be something special, as or Trent Williams as well, one of the best players in the NFL. Yeah, I think all of them would get their first rings in a matchup like this. Regardless, that is going to do it for today's show. Again, a shorter show, but the football season, NFL season, is literally, it starts Thursday. And Thursday, we're going to be releasing a podcast with our week 1 predictions, whether if it's with a special guest or just myself. We are going to have a special guest on usually every single Thursday. So if you are interested in something like that, where you want to come on, talk about the games with me, go ahead and follow us on Instagram as well as TikTok. And as long as I can see you follow us on both of there, I can see what we can do as far as setting up a weekly thing here where we get a fan on to talk about the week's slate of games and predict them here on the channel. Regardless, again, that's going to do it. Let me run through the matchups where the honorable mentions. We had KC and Philly. One of the matchups that I didn't have a graphic for was Cincy and San Fran. Again, I'd love to see it. However, it was a little bit too vanilla. But for the graphics, we had Cincy and Philly, the Giants and the Jets, Battle of New York, the Packers and the Jets, where it was the Rodgers-Green Bay, Jordan Love versus Rodgers game. Very interesting dynamic there. The Browns and Lions, desperate franchises, finally finding some success. The Dolphins and the Eagles, the Tua and the Jalen Hurts storyline would be definitely interesting. We have the Chargers and the Cowboys. I guess the Kellen Moore game. No real connection, just teams that have finally gotten over the hump. The Jacksonville and Philly game, on the other hand, are, two teams that it's going to be highlighted by the coaching staffs, but two teams that I think are very well-rounded and could very well meet in Super Bowl, in the 2024 Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 58. The Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, two teams that love to run the ball, play good defense, and of course, their logos are birds. And then moving over here to the final graphic that we had was that the Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers, we just talked about it, mentor versus mentee, one of the best offenses, one of the best defenses, would definitely set up an amazing Super Bowl matchup. But that is going to do it for today's show. You see the 11 or 12 Super Bowl matchups we gave you. Drop some of your Super Bowl matchups in the comments below. Again, whether if it's fake, whether if it's not going to happen, it's not realistic, or if you want to, go on the side of realism, drop me a Super Bowl matchup that is a little bit more obvious. I didn't include Buffalo in today's video, but in all honesty, I just don't really enjoy watching Buffalo play. I like watching Josh Allen play, not really the rest of the team. But that's maybe the biggest team I left out. Regardless, we're going to be back tomorrow with a fantasy football video, and Thursday, we're going to be having our Week 1 predictions. Friday, of course, we're going to have another fantasy football video for you guys here on the channel. The last thing I want to note is that we just surpassed 500 subs on the channel. Again, I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. We have done this for about almost a year now. We're approaching in about a month, and we've been doing 4 videos a week for a very long time, giving you guys consistent, high-quality content, in my opinion, and you guys are giving back, and hitting 500 subs was a very big goal for this channel. That was the goal for year 1 of this channel, was to hit 500 subs, and we're already past that. We're at 550, on the road to 1,000. I mean, by the end of this year, I would love to be at 1,000 subs. So if you enjoyed any point, all we ask for is that you support us down below on the road to that next big milestone. And again, thank you guys. Very, very appreciative, very grateful for what you guys have done for the channel, and myself as well. But that is going to do it for today's show. I'll see you guys tomorrow for some fantasy football content. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We're out.